Hello everyone, my name is Jan Zawadzki and I graduated my Master of Architecture degree at TU Delft in June 2025, and I thought it would be nice to record that presentation as well, which is the technical part of my graduation thesis. And if you want to watch a video of my design part of my graduation, then that video is available in the link in the description of this video. And this is the technical part. First of all, my thesis was titled Grochowska Row Revival. And to introduce you a little bit, we are in Poland, in Warsaw, in the district of Grochów. And in the district of Grochów, there is a street called Grochowska. And along that street, I noticed there is a row of buildings, tenement houses, built just before the Second World War. And what I also noticed that is those buildings are very much neglected and they need some kind of refurbishment effort and all of the renovation strategies applied to them. And what I also noticed is that they are very similar to each other, while not being modular. They are not the same, but the differences between them are very small. And then I thought that I also think that there are more of buildings like that in the whole city of Warsaw. And then let's say it wasn't enough for me to just think that there are more buildings like that and that something systematic can be done with them. So I wanted to actually check how many of buildings of the same typology as those from that row, how many of them are in Warsaw, and also where are they? So, how would you do that? You could go around the city by foot, by bike, or by car, and essentially look manually for those buildings with some kind of experience as an architect. How are how are they fitting in that typology? Or you can go to Google Earth and then just look manually around on the map. You could also use maybe Google Street Maps and go one by one on every street in Warsaw, and which would take a lot of time, obviously. And then there is also some geospatial data available for the city of Warsaw, and then you could try filtering out buildings that might fit that typology, but still there is not enough data in Warsaw in those geospatial data sets to kind of look for buildings like that. But then I also during the last year noticed on one elective that I took at TU Delft, I was taught about those computer vision self-supervised transformer models or foundation models. And one of them is, for example, Dino V2 from Meta. And what is very interesting in that model, that it can essentially take a input image or video and understand what is in that image. So it can semantically segment elements of that image. For example, which of them are closer, which of them are further away, and also, for example, what part of the image is a bed, what part of the image is a window, or roof, facade, and so on and so on. And then you might say it kind of understands the image in a way, and it doesn't look at the image itself, but it kind of transforms it into a multi-dimensional vector space. But for the sake of this video, and because also I don't understand it that well, that part, it kind of transforms the images into the representation that is computer readable. So those blobs are those representations on the right. Then it is possible to essentially compare those representations with each other, and you might see it in the same way as comparing those two images with each other. How similar are they? But not like pixel by pixel, but feature by feature. So where are the windows? How many windows? And all of the other features like that the model, the Dino model can understand. And then you can do that not only with one image, in this case like facade, but also the aerial image like from the top, like a satellite image. And then you can combine them, those representations, into essentially one representation in which you have two images of the same building. So then the idea right now is that if I can get those images for every building in Warsaw, including those buildings that are along the Grochowska Street, then I could compare them, like all of the buildings in Warsaw, compare them with the Grochowska buildings, and in this way quickly find buildings that are similar to Grochowska Row buildings. And the first question then is, where do I get the data from? First of all, there is a very easy way to get the satellite aerial images from the top using, for example, GeoPortal, which is connected with geospatial data. So having the outlines of the buildings from the GeoPackage file, for example, you can kind of you have it connected with the orthophoto imagery, and in this way, for example, using QGIS software or pure Python code, retrieve the aerial images of those buildings for each building in Warsaw. And then another way, also, which is kind of specific to city of Warsaw, is that we have available a Warszawa Ukośna service, which essentially is like plane images, so images taken from a plane, from an angle, in all of the directions, so north, south, and east and west, for the whole city of Warsaw. And then it is super convenient. Actually, you can just type in the street and the street number or location, like coordinates, and then you're being directed to that place. So in a sense, that building. And then you can easily just go and download this view as a JPEG image. So then, if I have the geospatial data of every building in Warsaw that I already downloaded the aerial image with, I can use that to get the coordinates of every building and essentially download an image like this from Warszawa Ukośna service, for every building. Of course, it would take a lot of time to download it for thousands of buildings, and also there are 4 directions, so like 4 times thousands of buildings, and it would take a lot of time. So I wrote a bot that just did the work for me. So it used the Warszawa Ukośna service to download all of those thousands of images. And also, I didn't do it for all of the buildings in Warsaw, because that would be around 150,000 buildings. So I used the available geospatial data from the geo package that I got from GeoPortal to pre-filter those buildings. So there are features like, is the building residential or is the building an office building? So, by this, also number of stories or the footprint area, I knew kind of what type of building the Grochowska Row buildings are already. And with that data, I just pre-filtered them to, in the end, have only 3,200 buildings in Warsaw. So if I had more data, for example, the year of construction, that would help a little bit more. But essentially, for all of those 3,200 buildings in Warsaw, I was able to prepare a dataset of those images. So one aerial image and also 4 of those oblique images for each building. And then from those images, they are being transformed into this one representation of the building, in a sense, like computer readable representation. And in the same way, I did for those buildings along the Grochowska Street. And then it was possible to essentially compare this averaged representation of the Grochowska Row buildings with all of those 3,200 other buildings in Warsaw. And that comparison meant that for each building, in that data set of buildings, it was then possible to get a similarity rank, essentially. So like how similar that building is to the averaged feature representation of Grochowska building. So then I was able to sort those buildings by the similarity rank. So having the highest similarity first and then the lowest further on. So in that way, I created a booklet of those buildings sorted by the similarity, and then just browsing through the booklet, it actually was visible that at the beginning the buildings are very, very similar to the Grochowska Row typology, and then the further I went, the less similar they got. So it looked like the Dino model was quite successful with differentiating those buildings between each other. So then I just subjectively, as a human, had to draw a line somewhere. So then I drew a line at one point where I saw that the buildings are not of the same typology as Grochowska. And thanks to that, my conclusion is that in the whole city of Warsaw, there are around 450 buildings of the same typology and the same type as Grochowska Row buildings, and around 120 which in my opinion are the same typology in general. And because it was connected with geospatial data, it was possible to color them on the map and essentially know where those buildings are, on the district level of, or the whole city, the whole capital city of Warsaw. So then you also know their addresses and, a lot of other things that might be useful. And also that might not be the case only for Warsaw, but also for other cities in Poland. So having that, there is this question of, so what? What can you do with that? The one thing that I imagine, first of all, is that we will have to refurbish and renovate a lot of buildings that are already in existence. So also the other thing is that we will have to do it with materials that are circular and not very hard on the environment, because then the scale matters in that case. If you have hundreds of buildings like that, then if you do it with what materials you do it with, it matters if it comes to the impact on the environment. So imagine there would be some funding, for example, from European Union or even from the capital city of Warsaw, funding to refurbish those buildings. So then, as we know already, where that kind of building is, where those buildings of the same typology are, then you could educate those people. First of all, for example, distribute some kind of leaflets or booklets that might inform those people living in those buildings that, hey, your building is eligible for this funding to get some subsidies for refurbishment of that type of building. Or as I did, along that leaflet, there could even be a guidebook for those people for some refurbishment strategies that could be used to renovate that specific type of building, in a more systematic way. And also, it could be even be a catalog of materials that are suitable for renovation and, future-proofing buildings like that. And as I did with my graduation, you could go a step further and design a retrofitting, future-proofing strategy for one building like that, that could be very easily applied to all of those buildings, not only this one row of buildings, but as I found hundreds of them in the city of Warsaw, it can be a design that could be applied to hundreds of them. So in that case, I focused on one of those buildings to essentially design a renovation and retrofitting strategy to give those people a little bit more space in the apartments and also on the outside. So it was the addition of the new facade on the courtyard side that from those small balconies gave them more space, but also improved the building thermally, as a new thermal barrier that would also give the people a little bit more space to occupy. All with circular bio-based materials, hopefully leading to that kind of transformation of the building. And then because I thought this design to be easily applied to all of those buildings, then that could be done for the whole row, making it just more scalable and possible to realize quite quickly in this case. So that was my project. Thank you very much for listening and watching the video. I hope that might be interesting to some people in the, I don't know, municipality or just any design field or geospatial data geeks or something, because yeah, it looks like those artificial intelligence computer vision models can also understand architecture in a way, and they can only get better. You can imagine maybe also fine-tuning those models for architecture and to differentiate features like that, to do a new kind of urban architecture search exercises on the city level, essentially having a very quick computer system that understands which building is what type of a building. There are many possibilities that I see here. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. See you sometime in the future.